I'm going to start off with Hoover. His YouTube channel is Pilot Debrief. Now, most of his stuff is aviation related. Now, his latest video, he's talking about the AI generated fakes from this cargo carrying, like an MD-11 was run by UPS. Now, there's apparently a handful of fakes that people have just come up with theories on what they think the crash was. Yeah, I find fakes here on YouTube on the net shocking, or actually not really. You just don't know quite what to believe here. But anyway, my guesses would be, not being an aircraft expert, but just from my limited knowledge, I'd guess one of about three different things. Now, maybe it's a maintenance thing where the mechanic at service that didn't get everything secured properly, maybe didn't get a bolt tightened, and it worked its way loose, and the engine came loose. Maybe the engine was out of balance, and the vibration shook it loose from the mounts, or maybe it's metal fatigue, or something just cracked in there and it came loose that way. That would be my three guesses, just from. But I'm willing to wait for the NTSB to make a preliminary statement, and then long term they'll make a final judgment on exactly what happened. But that's years down the road because they like to get everything just perfect, so it's just not guesswork on their part. Next thing I'm going to cover is this chick Winnie Roos Judd. Now this happened back here she's been dead for many years. Now back in the 1930s, her and two of her friends were sharing an apartment, and apparently one night they were all drunk. They got in some type of argument over this guy, and she was more or less the winner of this gun battle. They were fighting over a gun. Anyway, several days later, she showed up in Los Angeles. She had taken the train over there, and she showed up. Of course, a baggage handler, he said, "Ma'am, there's something wrong with your two trunks. There's blood leaking out of them, and they smell kind of funny." Of course, she split, and after 3 or 4 days, they caught her and brought her back and extradited her to Phoenix. While she showed up there in L.A. with the bodies of her two friends in these trunks. Well, they sentenced her to hang. This is like in 1931. They were still hanging people back in the late 30s. But anyway, they kind of got together and said, well, she didn't get proper legal representation, and they declared her mentally insane. Now, I tell you why I think they declared her mentally insane. Well, she was going to get interviewed. The papers were going to interview her, and she was going to spill the beans. Apparently, her and a couple of her friends were having an affair with this prominent land developer. Well, she was apparently married. I think all three of these chicks were having an affair with this guy. She was kind of sharing them, but she was going to spill the beans. It was going to be bad news for him. Now, if you kind of colludes with the judge and says, Judge, have her declared mentally insane, and then nobody will believe her. She can say anything she wants, and I can say, well, she's just crazy. She just, whatever. But anyway, she'd given a number of interviews. Well, she would, they locked her up in a state mental hospital. She'd probably escape. Well, she wasn't crazy. She just, but anyway, she'd escape, and then she'd come back, and then after she escaped 3 or 4 times, she finally got enough money, to finally split Phoenix. She ended up somewhere in Northern California, where she was actually the housekeeper for this family over in Northern California. She's apparently the housekeeper for many years, and then somebody eventually found her and and brought her back here to Phoenix to finish her sentence. Then the governor back early 70s at that time commuted her sentence or forgave her or something. Anyway, she got released and forgiven for all her crimes. Because she'd have been at that time in prison for 30, 40 years, something like that. She finished out the rest of her sentence. Well, she finished out the rest of her days as a housekeeper for this family in California because they really liked her. They didn't have any problem with her. Like I said, she wasn't crazy. Anyway, that's a Winnie Roos Judd. But that house is still there. It's private property, so you really can't go in there. But you can go from the outside. And I thought about next time I'm in downtown Phoenix, I just kind of mosey around his house in Phoenix with my ghost baiter and just see, what's kind of hanging around there at that house in Phoenix. Next thing I'm going to cover, just caught a bit of the U.S. weather report from this afternoon, and apparently several feet of global warming have settled, into the eastern United States. If anybody doesn't know, that's that white frozen water stuff. That's global warming. If you don't know what global warming is, it's that white stuff that comes falling out of the sky. Yeah, that's what the weather guy said. Several feet of global warming have blanketed the eastern United States. Okay, love you. Let's keep life exciting and interesting. Bye bye.